The economic inequality that plagues the city of Selma is indicative of a larger national trend. Job numbers out yesterday from the Bureau of Labor Statistics show a gain of 295,000 jobs for the month of February, and national unemployment falling to a 7-year low of 5.5%. But for African Americans nationwide, the unemployment level remains at 10.4%. Now, one group is proposing a novel strategy to tackle that disparity head on. Their target: Janet Yellen and the Federal Reserve. In a new report out this week, the Center for Popular Democracy implores the Fed to implement policies and institutional reforms that focus specifically on boosting African-American employment. Khalil and Yolanda are still here with me, and joining me now is the author of that report, Connie Razza of the Center for Popular Democracy. Thank you for being here, Connie. And the first question is simply, why focus on the Fed?
So obviously, there are a number of agencies that could make policy change that would impact discrimination. But fundamentally, if we're not at a full employment economy, if there are too many workers looking for the few jobs that are around, we're not going to be able to get to the racial parity that we need. Full employment means that there's wage growth that matches productivity. It means that there are enough jobs for the workers who are looking for jobs, and it means that workers are in a position to bargain, not just to raise the floor, but to raise the bar for working conditions for their communities. Let
me ask you this. The Fed has a lot of responsibilities in terms of monetary policy, but does focusing on keeping rates low risk fueling a credit bubble that could actually hurt African Americans like the housing bubble did?
So we're not at a place where there's great inflation right now. There's not a reason to slow the economy. Right now, African Americans are still struggling as other groups are seeing their wealth stabilize after the losses of the Great Recession. African Americans are still experiencing wealth decreases. African American, as you saw earlier, African American unemployment rates are still above the national unemployment rate at the height of the Great Recession. In Black America, across the country, we're still in a recession.
And Chloe, I know you wanted to get in on this point.
I just wanted to add that the circumstances are even bleaker than that, because we know by research done by Becky Pettit and others that our current population surveys and other ways in which we know who's working and who's not working don't account for people who are incarcerated, overwhelmingly Black and brown, and therefore the gaps that you've described in this report, whether they are wage or wealth, are further exacerbated in the real world because it doesn't account for all those people who are not currently able to work.
That's right, and it doesn't account for the people who are left out of the unemployment numbers because they've been discouraged by the horrible labor conditions.
So, Connie, I want to get back to the Fed because you advocate for some very specific institutional reforms. Tell us about what these reforms are and how you think they'll help African-American employment specifically.
Absolutely. So first and foremost is that the Federal Reserve needs to prioritize full employment over stemming inflation. We're not in a place of inflation risk, and that will make sure that employers don't have the luxury of discriminating, frankly, because there won't be enough workers for them to arbitrarily cut people out of the labor market. The second is that the Fed boards of directors need to be much more representative. Currently, there are 108 directors of the regional level on the Federal Reserve. Only 2 seats are held by representatives of worker organizations, by labor union representatives. 87% of those seats are filled by bank and corporate leaders. They have a very different perspective on wage growth. For them, it's labor costs. That's inflation, as opposed to wage growth, which drives the economy.
So much more to say on the Fed, but in the meantime, thank you very much to Connie Razza.
Thank you.
Up next, back to Melissa Harris Perry and